Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to breakfast at the Clinton School. You know, we love public programs, and we'll do them 24 hours a day when we get people like this to come join us. My name is Skip Rutherford. I'm Dean of the school, and again, we welcome you to a program that I know our students have been looking forward to for some time, and those of you in the community. And we're glad that you're here at 8 o'clock this morning to join us. We will take Millard Fuller anytime we can get him. And I want to thank Charles Ray and Ray Higgins for their help with today's program. Millard's here with the Cooperative Baptist Fellowship of Arkansas and some other programs today. And Charles and Ray were essential in making it possible for Millard to be here at the Clinton School, so thank you. And if you haven't seen the work that Charles and others are doing over in the Arkansas Baptist College neighborhood, go look at it. What Fitz, Hill, and others are doing and what they're doing together is a remarkable success story here in Little Rock, and we're glad to support it and to help them. May I ask, please, that you turn your cell phones and other electronic devices off. And toast for Eddie Drilling, the head of AT&T, as he got up to make his remarks, his cell phone went off. Of course, he was glad because it was revenue for him. Millard Fuller is the founder and former president of Habitat for Humanity. Under his 29-year leadership, 200,000 homes were built in over 100 countries. He received the Harry S. Truman Award for Public Service, the Martin Luther King Humanitarian Award, and in 1996, President Clinton awarded him the Presidential Medal of Freedom, the highest civilian honor in this country. Recognized, he and his wife Linda were recognized by the Points of Light Foundation in 2002. And in 2005, he founded the Fuller Center for Housing, which is a cooperative group to maximize resources and to build houses all across the country and the world. He's received more than 50 honorary doctorate degrees, and he's written 10 books, including one he signed for me, The House That Love Built. We're very privileged to have him at the Clinton School because if there is an example of public service in the world, this man is it. Ladies and gentlemen, Millard Fuller.
Thanks, Dean Rutherford. It is such an honor for me to be here. But right at the outset, since this is an early morning gathering, I shared a story back in the conference room, and immediately when I shared it, they said, "Oh, you must tell the people that out here." A little 16-year-old in Chicago wrote me an email recently, and she said she had discovered that she was related to me by marriage. My mother died when I was quite young, and my dad remarried, and I had a stepmother. And this little girl was kin to me through my stepmother. And she said she had found out that she was related to me by marriage, and she was so pleased because she had found out I had started Habitat for Humanity. And one phrase in her little email said, "I want to change the world. And I want to get in touch with you so you can help me know how to do it." So I called her at 7 o'clock the next morning. "Hello," and she was asleep. I said, "How are you going to change the world if you're asleep?" I said, "You got to get up. You got to wake up if you're going to change the world." She sent me an email the next week, and she said, "I'm getting up an hour earlier each morning now." So congratulations on getting up early this morning for being here at this gathering. Dean Rutherford said in his introduction that I was an example of public service. Well, President Clinton is a consummate model for public service. And I think you who are students here are privileged to be getting a master's of public service, the only school in the country that offers such. I just have a huge respect for President Clinton, in fact, for the Clinton family, and I'm sure all of you here do as well. I've had the privilege of knowing President Clinton for many years. I got to know him and his family in the late 1980s when he was governor, and his family and our family were attending Renaissance Weekend, a program run by Phil and Linda Later, that at that time was at Hilton Head, South Carolina, and now is held every year at Charleston and other locations. But in the early days of Renaissance Weekend, it was much smaller than it is now, so the setting was pretty intimate, and for 5 years, we were with the Clintons at Renaissance Weekend and became very, very good friends. And I came to appreciate his commitment to public service and his intelligence. And of course, I think history showed that he became a very superb president and is a superb ex-president now, along with another ex-president that I'm closely associated with, Jimmy Carter. But I saw the heart of the man in 1992, right after Hurricane Andrew hit South Florida, and President Clinton called me from Miami, and he said, "Millard, these people are pitiful. We got to help these folks." And and subsequently, of course, Habitat for Humanity was already in the Miami area. In fact, none of our houses were damaged in that hurricane, which was an interesting thing. It made a lot of national news at that time. But since then, hundreds and hundreds of more houses have been built for those families that were devastated. But later in that same year, when President Clinton was running for president in 1992, I'll never forget he called me and said that he wanted to build a Habitat house during the Republican convention. Those of you who are older will remember that President Bush and Secretary of State Baker walked around in the woods during the Democratic convention, and that made national news. But in contrast to them walking around in the woods, he said he wanted to build a Habitat house. And so I said, "Oh, that's great." And we decided to do it in Atlanta. And he wanted to do it on a Monday. And so the arrangements were made for him to come to build on a house on that Monday. And it worked out really well for me because I had a speaking engagement that weekend in Philadelphia, and I was going to fly in from Philadelphia and meet up with President Clinton to build a house on that Monday. And then I was going to go down to our home in Americus, Georgia, which, if you know your geography, everybody knows where Americus, Georgia is, of course. It's just a little less well known than Little Rock, but it is 140 miles south of Atlanta, and I was going to drive down because my daughter, my youngest daughter, Georgia, we had arranged for her to go and do a year abroad of study in France, and we had promised her a week of vacation in Florida before she left home for a year. And so this worked out just perfect, and we had all our plans set. And after the plans were set, then I had another call from President Clinton's office. He called me the first time, but he had somebody else call me the second time. He said, "Oh, he wants to move it to Wednesday." And I said, "Oh, President, that just doesn't work for me at all." I said, "Tell President Clinton I love him, but I love my daughter even more." And I can't tell my daughter that I'm going to mess up her vacation to go build a house. So I said, "I'll arrange for Jimmy Carter to be there with you, but I can't be there." So I flew back from Philadelphia, drove my car down to Americus, got with my wife and our daughter, and we drove to the area near just east of Destin. And while we were I hate to shop for groceries. So my wife needed some groceries for our week of vacation there, and she went in the store, and I was walking around the parking lot, and I saw a little local paper, and it says Al Gore vacationing down there. So when my wife came out, I said, "Look, Al Gore is here." I said, "In the morning, I'm gonna call and find out where he is, because maybe he's planning to go up to be with President Clinton for the build." Well, we got our groceries, went to our cabin. Next morning, we were walking, and these guys were jogging down the beach, and my wife Linda said, "Those look like Secret Service agents." I said, "They are Secret Service agents. That's Al Gore. Let's go catch them." So we took off down the beach, running, and we caught up with him and started talking to him. And I told him, I said, I was a delegate. When I was 21 years old, I was a delegate to the Democratic National Convention in Chicago. And we were caucusing in the Alabama delegation. And Frank Clement, who at that time was governor of Tennessee, came in with a 10-gallon cowboy hat on and made a fiery speech asking us to yield to the state of Tennessee to nominate Al Gore Sr. for president. And without further discussion, we yielded to Tennessee to nominate his daddy. And so I was telling him that story, which he didn't know about. And then I told him, I said, "Are you going to be with President Clinton on Wednesday to build a house up in Atlanta?" He said, "Yes, we're going to go." And he says, "You want to go with me?" I said, "Well, maybe." I said, "How are you going to get up there?" He said, "I got an airplane." So, and he ended out, he was in the cabin next to us. So we hung out with the Gores all that week on the beach and having a good time. And then of course, I didn't have anything but beach clothes. I was just going to be down with my daughter. And on Tuesday, I went back and talked to my wife and daughter, and they said, "Oh, this is an opportunity. You need to go," because he said he'd take me up and come right back. So anyway, we got in a car. He was dressed up in a suit and tie, and I had little shorts on and a T-shirt. Looked as out of place as you know what. But anyway, got on this plane. It was just the Gores and me and the press, and we flew up to Atlanta. Had a gourmet meal. And as we got up there, we looked out the window, and they said, "Oh, that's President Clinton's plane. We can't land before him." So we started circling the airport, and he landed, and then we landed, and we got out, and the protocol was, we were standing at the bottom of the stairs, and President Clinton's coming down, and he says, "What are you doing here?" I said, "I caught a ride with Al." We got in a motorcade, and we went into Atlanta, and went to this particular restaurant where they prearranged, and there was, a huge crowd of people around there, and they were going around. Of course, President Clinton was dressed up, and Al Gore was dressed up, and I was dressed up in beach clothes, and Jimmy Carter had on dungarees, and it was quite a sight. And it was President Clinton's birthday, and my youngest daughter, Georgia, was close friends with Clinton, so she had handmade him a birthday card. Said, "Happy birthday, Boogie Boy Bill." And we went back in this private room with the Carters and the Clintons and the Gores, and we had a wonderful time just laughing and joking for about an hour and a half. And then the public officials, the mayor, and all the others came in, and it was just a wonderful experience. The next morning, we went out and built this house for a single mother, and we were, worked hard and got the walls up, got the windows in, the doors, and got the house in the dry. And of course, President Clinton won the election, and what I'm sure it's not well known, but he invited that homeowner to the inauguration and got her a gown and put her up in a big hotel, and she was like Cinderella, and had a time of her life, and came back. A year later, there was a full-page article in the Atlanta Journal-Constitution about that homeowner, who prior to that time, by everybody's definition, was a loser. She had not had success in her life. But now, she was a community leader. She had a different self-image. The President of the United States built my house. Not everybody can say that. And it was just a wonderful experience. But it shows you what kind of a public servant President Bill Clinton was and is. And to have a school named after him and to be a student here is a privilege, and I'm sure all of you feel that way about being a student here. We need public servants. We need people who have the interest of the public in their heart instead of narrow self-interest. And I concluded a long time ago in my life that I wanted to use whatever talents and abilities God has given me to be a servant, to be a public servant. The whole message of the Bible is to be a servant. Jesus, of course, was the consummate model of servanthood, of washing the feet of his disciples, the epitome of servanthood. And I have found it to be a joyous thing, an incredibly joyous experience to be about serving. And it brings unbelievable rewards to one. I mean, that has been my life experience. And that's why in 2005 that I had difficulty with the board of Habitat for Humanity International, and friends and associates at that time. I had just turned 70 years old. And people said to me, Millard, you know, you deserve a rest. You've built housing for 1 million people. Why don't you get you an RV and go on perpetual vacation now? And I said, well, that might be attractive to some people, but it isn't attractive to me because I love what I do and I feel blessed by what I do. And so I'm going to stay at it. And so that's why I formed the Fuller Center for Housing. And the Fuller Center for Housing is growing phenomenally. We're only 3 years old now and already are operating in 45 states in the U.S., 45 towns and cities in 25 states, and we're in 12 other countries and growing at an incredible rate. But I do what I do because I see the need. And even though Habitat for Humanity has now, it's up about 1.5 million people now live in a Habitat house. And that work is ongoing, and I'm very pleased about that. But the need is so much greater than what is being done in the area of housing. And that is my particular realm. But public service takes many shapes and many forms and involves the tackling of many issues. And we need to have many more schools of public service. And I hope that this one will spawn many more in the years to come, and I'm sure it will. But I remember a few years ago, I was privileged to be at the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland. I'm sure a lot of you have heard of that. President Clinton has been there a number of times. It's a gathering of the top leaders of the world. People like Bill Gates go on a regular basis, and the King of Jordan is there, and top leaders of the United States and countries, other countries of the world. But the leaders of the World Economic Forum named me and my wife as social entrepreneurs and gave us all expenses paid to come over there and be a part of that gathering. And there were a number of other so-called social entrepreneurs there, all of whom were involved in public service of one kind or another. Some were dealing with the problem of AIDS, and others with illiteracy, and any number of issues. And my wife and I were the senior people there, and these were very, very smart people, and they were very aware of what we had done in Habitat for Humanity. So they gathered around us as the senior members of that group of about 35, what they call social entrepreneurs from all over the world. And they said, how did you do it? How did you do it? How could you start off with no money and having an organizing meeting, sitting on the floor of a chicken barn because we didn't have any money to buy chairs? And we had the organizing meeting of Habitat for Humanity in 1976. And then 20-something years later, 1 million people are living in a house in 100 countries. And the lingo in that world is called bringing your project to scale. I'm sure you know that term here. How did you bring it to scale? How did you get out of the chicken barn and be able to buy some chairs and buy some desks and raise millions and hundreds of millions? And at that time, our budget was more than $1 billion a year. How do you go from our first annual budget of the Fuller Center of Habitat for Humanity was $70,000. And in 2005, when I parted company with Habitat, it was $1.1 billion. How do you go from $70,000 a year to $1.1 billion? We want to know your secret. And I said, I'm going to tell you the secret. And I'm going to tell you the secret right now. Because many of you students who are here will go on to form your own nonprofits. There are so many more nonprofits that need to be formed. And there are nonprofits that are already existing that need your dynamic, outstanding leadership. But how do you do it? How is it that some people are able to start something and it takes off, and others start something and it doesn't go anywhere? What's the secret? And you know what I told them? I said, most social entrepreneurs have a clear vision of what it is they want to accomplish. There's something on their heart that they have a passion for. And they want to make a difference, like this young 16-year-old girl in Chicago. I want my life to make a difference. And my advice to her was, you got to get up. You can't be asleep. If you're going to make a difference, you got to be awake. That's one thing. But whereas so many social entrepreneurs and public servants have a clear vision of what it is they want to accomplish, they don't have a clue on where they're going to get the support to do it. We've talked about that right here in Little Rock with having a Fuller Center in Little Rock. The need is glaringly obvious. All you got to do is go into certain neighborhoods and you say, somebody ought to do something about this pitiful situation. All of these folks living in these rundown, ratty houses, this is a huge, very obvious need, but it'll take millions of dollars to take care of it. Where are we going to get those millions of dollars? And here's what I told those young people in Davos, Switzerland at the World Economic Forum. From the first day of the work of Habitat for Humanity, I had a clear vision of what it was we wanted to accomplish, namely putting every family on earth in a decent place to live, a very laudable, a very worthwhile social need that is widespread all over the world. We wanted to eliminate, we wanted to end poverty housing in the world. It'll take gazillions of dollars. How are you going to do it? And I said from the beginning, I had a clear vision of what I wanted to do by building all these houses, but I had an equally clear vision on where I was going to get the support. I was going to get it from the largest organization in the world. And I said, what is that largest organization in the world? Not one of them knew. Some said, the United States Postal Service? I said, no. The U.S. government? No. How about Microsoft? How about General Motors? No, I said, how about the Church of Jesus Christ with more than 2 billion members? And I said, I looked to the church in all of its manifestations. I came up with this idea called the theology of the hammer. That while people disagree on theology and disagree on philosophy, disagree on politics, why can't we agree on a hammer and use a hammer as a demonstration of God's love? And so I said, I went to the Orthodox, I went to the Catholics, I went to the Protestants, I went to the conservatives, I went to the liberals, and I just got them all under the same tent and said, let's agree to disagree on a whole bunch of stuff, but let's agree on a hammer, and let's agree that everybody to get sleepy at night ought to have a decent place in which to sleep, and we all could agree on that. And today, I would say 95% of all of the habitat groups that have been founded in the world have been started in somebody's church. In somebody's church. Now, I'm not saying that in your particular case that your support system has got to be the church. It could be medical groups. It could be lawyers. It could be, but you need, if you're going to have anything that works, you've got to have not only a clear vision of what you want to accomplish, but a clear vision of who's going to support it. Who's going to support it? Otherwise, it ain't going to go anywhere. And in my case, I felt like our natural support base was the church. And of course, it's expanded out now, and corporate America embraces it, and companies and foundations and thousands and thousands and thousands of individuals. But I just want to leave you with that message and that secret of don't just go one-sided in terms of what your interests are and not be concerned about who's going to support it. Speaking of that, in 1992, when President Clinton was running for president, we had been advocating for a long time that we wanted to end poverty housing in the world. And in 1992, I said, we need to model what we want to accomplish worldwide here in our local community. So we have a university in our town called Georgia Southwestern State University. And I called together all of the leaders of our town. And I got one of the banks to pay. You know, people will come if you have a free meal. And so I got the banks a couple of the banks to put on a free meal at the university. And I invited all of the leaders, the editor of the paper, the superintendent of the schools, our state senator, our state representative, head of the Kiwanis Club, the Rotary Club, the Lions Club, everybody. Had about 200 people there. And I stood up and I said, I have a bold initiative I want to launch. I want to end poverty housing in our town and county. I want to make sure, and Sumter County, Georgia, one of the poorest counties in Georgia. I said, and we had done an informal survey and found out we needed about 500 houses to do the job. So I said, I propose that we model here locally what we're advocating for the world. Let's make sure that every family in our town and county has a decent place to live. And everybody was general agreement. Okay, that sounds like a good idea. I said, let's do it by the year 2000. And all over the audience, you get go, 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 go. It sounds like a good idea if you're just going to do it sometime. But 8 years, it'll take millions of dollars to build 500 houses in our little town and county. Where are you going to get the money? I said, we're going to get it from God. And somebody said, really, where are we going to get it? I said, we're really going to get it from God. The Bible says the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof. That just about covers everything. And God's money is just in your pocket, and we got to extract it. We got to get in the extracting business. At that time, we were building 5 houses a year there locally. Within 2 years, we were building 60 houses a year. On September the 15th of the year 2000, I stood in the front yard of the Thomas family house. We had a big sign out front that said Victory House. That week, we built 35 houses in 1 week. 35 houses in 1 week. We had scoured the countryside. We had gridded the whole town and county. We knew who lived in each little grid and what houses were substandard, what houses needed to be torn down, what families needed new houses. And we had built everybody a house, and I thought we were going to have to import some poor people because we had trouble finding the last 35 families. But I stood in front of the Thomas family house with a big sign that said Victory House, and I led 400 people singing Victory in Jesus. We had eliminated poverty housing in our town and county. You can do it. Amazing things can be done if you put your mind and heart to it and you know who's going to support it and you go after it. You get up early, stay up late, and you just are committed. There's no substitute for commitment. You have to be passionate. You have to feel so deeply about something that victory is what you are going to have no matter what. We're now working in my hometown where I was raised, Lynette, Alabama. It's right on the eastern border of Alabama, and then right across the border is West Point, Georgia. Lynette, Alabama, Valley, Alabama, West Point, Georgia, called the Chattahoochee Valley. They picked up on this idea of what we did in Sumter County, and they're going to eliminate poverty housing. We started a year ago, and in a year we raised $1.5 million in that little area, another very poor area. We've already finished 15 new houses, renovated 2 others, just got 5 acres of land with 39 derelict houses on it. We're tearing down the 39 houses, going to put 20 new houses up there. And I was telling Dean Rutherford next August, my wife and I will have been married 50 years on August 30th of next year, and we're going to celebrate by building a bunch of houses. And on August 31st, we're going to start a bunch of houses on that land, and I'm looking for Clinton School of Public Service volunteers to help us build those houses, to take another step on ending poverty housing there. And you know what? We need to end poverty housing in Little Rock, Arkansas. That's where we need to end poverty housing. And I want to tell you one final story, so we got time left for plenty of questions. When I formed this new organization, the Fuller Center for Housing, the first place that I went to was Shreveport, Louisiana, to be with a mutual friend of mine and Charles Ray's, a man named Mike McCarter. And a bunch of these Katrina victims had fled up to Shreveport. 20,000 people had fled up there. And he said, we need help. And I went up there and we launched a program to help those Katrina victims and other people who lived in that area too. And I contacted President Clinton. And President Clinton gave us $100,000 out of the Bush-Clinton Katrina Fund. And I went down to New Orleans and he presented that money to us, which was a huge help. And we raised probably $2.5 million. We've already built 35 new houses in Shreveport, renovated 15 others. I will be in Shreveport later this month, and we will build 3 more houses. And then in October there'll be more built, December built, more built. And we've transformed one whole neighborhood in Shreveport, the so-called Allendale neighborhood. And the community has now got behind it in an amazing way. One family there contributed $700,000 to the project. One family. And First Baptist Church just gave us $50,000. First Methodist Church just gave us another $50,000. We have a program in the Fuller Center for Housing that's a youth program headed by a young man that graduated from Notre Dame a year ago named Ryan Ifiola. He led a bicycle team across the United States to raise money for the Fuller Center. His goal was $100,000, raised $135,000, rode through Shreveport, got an article in the newspaper, and a local businessman was so inspired by it, he gave $50,000. They got over $800,000 in the bank in Shreveport, and they're building houses and transforming this particular neighborhood of Allendale. The same thing can happen in Little Rock, Arkansas. And we're talking about getting it started here. And I hope you folks here at the Clinton School of Public Service will get behind it, because, folks, getting families in a decent place to live is foundational. A house is a foundation stone on which human development occurs. And if children don't have a good place to live, they can't become the best they can be in life. One quick story will take me a couple of minutes, and I'll take your questions. He shared with you in his introduction that I have been privileged to receive a number of honorary doctorate degrees. I give a lot of commencement addresses. I love to do that. But I was invited in 2003 to the University of Portland to give a commencement address. And when I accepted the invitation, the president wrote me and said, I'm very glad that you're going to be our commencement speaker for a lot of reasons, but one is that we have a special graduate who is graduating this year. His name is Judah Slavkovsky, and he and his family got the first house built in Sisters, Oregon when he was in 5th grade. He and his sisters grew up in that house. He is now graduating with highest honors and with the highest grade point average in biology of anybody in the university. I went out there. We went back to the staging area to put our robes on. I was with the president and the faculty and administration getting our robes on. Judah was off in another part of the building getting his robes on with the fellow students. And Judah's mother and father and two sisters came in, and they just said, we want to meet you and thank you to let you know what a difference it's made in our family to have a good place to live. It transformed our family. We marched in, had the program. I gave my commencement address. That's a Catholic school. I went and sat down by the Archbishop. And you know the drill on graduations. The students come marching by. They shake hands with the president, get their diploma, and go back to their seats. Of course, I'm sitting there waiting on Judah. Finally, he comes marching across the stage. I'm watching. He shakes hands with the president. He gets his degree. But instead of marching back and taking his seat with the other students, he came straight to me. He extended his hand. Thank you for the house. That's what he said. Thank you for the house. He turned and took his seat. I've stayed in touch with Judah. The next year, he went to Palestine to work in a clinic. He worked there 6 months. Then he went to East Africa, and he worked there for 6 months. He came back. He applied to medical school. He was admitted to Harvard Medical School on full scholarship, $59,000 a year. He is a senior in medical school at Harvard University now. He's at the top of his class. I was with him a few months ago. I've been up to see him twice since he's up there. I've been out to his family. I visited with his family, slept in his bed. His family still lives in that house. He's so proud. His two sisters are doing real well. But I spoke at Hancock Congregational Church, right across the green where the Revolutionary War started in this country. And I introduced Judah to the congregation. And in his remarks, here's what he said. That house made a huge difference in my life. It enabled me to study and to be the best I could be in school. And he said, now I'm going to be a medical doctor. And I want you to know what I want to do with that. I want to make a positive impact on world health. And I want to be a medical doctor for the poor. Little kid that grew up in a Habitat house. Public service is so important. It makes a difference in the lives of people. And I just see awesome potential in this room. God bless you for what you're doing. God bless this school. God bless each one of you as you wake up early to make a difference. Thank you.
Wow. Now, let's have some questions. We've got Annie, Bob, here's Annie. First one to raise her hand, I'm not surprised.
I'm back.
I know, here's your mic.
I'm back. Welcome. Your presence is very important in this city to be here on a summit on housing. I am a 5-year board member of Habitat. I've been there when those families moved in and we blessed the house. I also recognize that it is important to continue to develop volunteers like what we have here. And I'm particularly excited about Arkansas Baptist College and those 100 young men who are over there who are going to learn that public service is also important as athletics. My question is, I know that the many houses that I have been there and helped dedicate in this city, that the myth that Jimmy Carter started Habitat, not you, the myth that many people think that Habitat residents, they were given the house, they do not understand that they put sweat equity as a prerequisite. My concern is that today, I know some of our Habitat homeowners have had to go into foreclosure as a board member. That was very painful to me as a board member. Mm-hmm. But I think what it was is that it was the beginning of seeing where the economics was fixing to happen in this country. And as a person who has been watching the foreclosure ladder go farther and farther into our community, what can we in Habitat help people who got their homes the old-fashioned way not through Habitat, who are now my newest project, is for those who are homeless, who had a home, who paid their mortgage. But what can we in Habitat, those homeowners, help others to hold on and have hope and believe that we will rise again? To me, that's one of the things. We have been leaders in many things, in how to mobilize volunteer service, but now we've got to give volunteer effort of how to keep hope when it's so dreary economically in this country and in this world.
Okay, thank you. That was a very complicated question, but if I can sort of distill it down as I understand it, I think the answer to this whole situation of so many houses being foreclosed and so many people losing their homes, even including some Habitat people, is because we have confused as a society wants and needs. And a lot of people have raised up their wants way above their needs and way above their ability to support all of those wants. I remember one time very clearly a lady drove up in a Jaguar wanting to explain that she couldn't make her house payments. And another lady came in with a very fancy hairdo to explain that she couldn't make her house payments. And I think what we've got to do is get back to the basics in a difficult economic times like this and explain to people that you will not wither up and die if you don't have that widescreen TV. And you will not wither up and die if you don't have that, big, expansive sofa in your living room. That we've got to get back down to the basics and make sure that people understand that a place to live is foundational. And that is important. You need to put that top of the list. And if you live a mile away from where you work, you can ride a bicycle to work. You don't have to have a Lexus to get to work. So I think it's an educational thing of helping people to adjust and adapt to changing economic times and scale down the wants, to get down to the needs and get through the difficult times and don't lose your house. I mean, you just think about it, folks. If somebody loses a Habitat, if you lose a no-profit, no-interest house, you just lost the best deal there is. You can't go down the street and find a better deal. So I'm not sure I answered all of your questions, but I hope I made a good stab at it.
Next question.
Thank you.
Right here.
Yes.
I live in the middle of Little Rock, in a integrated, diverse neighborhood, and I'm kind of a student of neighborhoods. I'm very interested in what makes a neighborhood work. And I visited the community renewal folks down in Shreveport, and I know their emphasis definitely is on houses, but it's also on neighborhoods, how to make the neighborhood function and continue and sustain itself. And I just wondered if you could talk a little bit about community renewal.
Yes. What she's talking about is community renewal over in Shreveport, Louisiana, which is run by Mac McCarter, and that's our partner that we worked with in the Fuller Center in Shreveport. But they put a friendship house in these different neighborhoods. I think they built 9 of them over in Shreveport now, and they will put a family in each friendship house. It's maybe 3,000, 3,500 square foot house, and they put a mother and a father in there with children, because many people in these low-income neighborhoods have never seen an intact family. They don't know what an intact family looks like. And so they model an intact family, for one thing. You see mama and papa and children sitting around a table eating breakfast and supper and lunch. And these are very open families who are there as public servants to help the people in that neighborhood. And people who have domestic violence issues can come there for counseling. They have computers. People can come there and get tutorial work on computer to students. They have playgrounds where the students can come and play together. And just any social issue that you can think about. They try to address it and get neighbors to know one another so that instead of neighbors being afraid of their neighbor, they get to know the neighbor, and they do prayer walks. They walk through the neighborhood and they find out that Joe and Sally are having marital problems, and they'll stop in front of that house and pray for them, standing in the middle of the street. And that has an impact on folks. If they know that somebody cares enough about them to walk around and stand in front of their house and pray for them, it has an impact on making the neighborhood more of a neighborhood where people know one another and care about one another. They put little signs up in front of the houses, "We care." And they got those signs posted all over the neighborhood, "We care, we care, we care." And that's our partner over there.
Question right back here, Sarah.
Hi, my name is Sarah Himmelfarb, and I'm a student here at the Clinton School. First of all, I just want to thank you for coming today, and I want to thank you for empowering so many of my peers who have worked with Habitat for Humanity. My question is, with all of the efforts to make sincere environmental change, are there partnerships that are happening with Habitat Humanity to green the houses that you're creating?
Yes. Of course, I'm devoting pretty much my full time with the Fuller Center for Housing now. And the Fuller Center for Housing we did our first green build in Pendleton County, West Virginia in April of this year, where we built one new house and renovated another one and put a huge emphasis on being green, energy efficient, best materials, utilizing energy efficient materials and so forth. And I know that Habitat for Humanity has continued to do that as well. We want to be good environmentalists as we build houses for families in need. Absolutely. Thanks for that good question.
Question right.
Hi, my name is Ashley Davis. I'm also a student here at the Clinton School. My interest is in the way that you started your new initiative, the Fuller Center. Is there anything you learned over the years with Habitat that you wish you would have done differently, that you've implemented with the Fuller Center? And I guess how do you feel about starting a new initiative after being so long with one place?
Okay, thank you for that question. We have brought into effect through the Fuller Center a brand new initiative. It's called the Greater Blessing Box Initiative. All of us know that in this country we have an increasing number of senior citizens who are still living in their own homes, but the front porch is falling off, or 3 windows are broken and the roof leaks, and they don't have the money to fix it. All you got to do is look in USA Today, today's paper, and it talks about the problem of the elderly who still live in their homes. It has a picture of a lady with multiple sclerosis. She's 65 years old, lives in Tucson, Arizona, and she has difficulty getting around the house because there's step-ups and step-downs, and you can't get in to get a shower and so forth. So this whole article is talking about the importance of builders making houses visitable. Visitability is the key word for people with disabilities, people in a wheelchair, whatever, making the doors wider, making no-step entrances, and so forth. But we in the Fuller Center have launched a new program called the Greater Blessing Box Initiative, where we go in with volunteers. Like over in Shreveport, for example, a year ago, we had the 3rd annual Millard and Linda Fuller built 9 new houses and renovated 5. The 5 that we renovated were for elderly people. And volunteers do the work free of charge, and at the end of the process, instead of putting a mortgage on the house, we give them a little wooden box. It's a little wooden box so big by so big by so big, and we say to Sally, and so many of these people are widows, maybe they're 80 years old, 85 years old, still in relatively good health, don't want to go to the nursing home, but they can't afford to fix the house up. How many of you know somebody here in Little Rock like that? They're all over. And so then we sit down with this person and say, look, we have expended $7,000 on fixing up your house. We've done it because God loves you and so do we. We cherish you. We want you to stay in your house for as long as you can. But the Bible says it's blessed to receive, but more blessed to give. So nobody is too poor to receive the blessing of giving. So we say, if we gave you the chance, Sally, over what period of time could you pay the $7,000 back? She says, well, my total income is a Social Security check of $750. I got food, I got medicine, I got clothing. But I tell you what, I think if you gave me 7 years, I could do it. So you put 84 envelopes in the little wooden box. And you say, put that on your coffee table, and every month you take out 1/84th and mail it in. If you do, on the authority of God's word, I'm telling you, you'll receive a blessing greater than getting your house fixed up. And if you do, we'll use the money to help somebody else. So we're doing that all over the country now, and it's proving to be a very popular program, and it would be hugely needed right here in Little Rock. Going into these older neighborhoods where people have work that needs to be done, and you do it, but instead of putting a mortgage on, which is a traditional Habitat methodology, you give them this little wooden box.
Todd?
I'm Todd Moore. I'm another student here at the Clinton School. I appreciate your connection with the Spirit of God and how it's impacted your passion, your ability to deliver God's blessings to the world. As a believer, it's really motivational to me. But one of the things I think that's really inspirational about what you've been able to do is your sustained connection to faith-based ministry and community-based mission, which is very, very rare. I've worked in nonprofits 15 years. You're one of the few organizations that I've seen sustain that connection. Will you talk a little bit about how you've done it and the importance of that? Because you're right, there's a depth of giving and passion in the faith-based community that goes largely untapped with community-based resources.
Right. Well, one of the things that we did from day one in Habitat for Humanity, we started every day with devotions. Every day with devotions. We'd take 30 minutes and have a time of prayer, Bible reading, praying for the sick, finding out who's in trouble or whatever, and giving praises to God for the blessings of whatever. But, the Bible says, seek the kingdom first and all else will be added. It doesn't say seek the kingdom first and you won't need anything else, but it says it's getting things in priority. Unfortunately, the new leaders of Habitat International have cut out devotions now. They don't have daily devotions anymore. I don't know what the reasoning is, but to me, when you honor God in your work, there will be a blessing that will flow to you. That's been my experience. And so there has been some movement toward more secularization in Habitat for Humanity with the new leaders. I wish them well, but I think you're treading on dangerous ground when you depart from reliance on a higher power.
Question right here. Yes, sir.
Hi, I'm Bill Plunkett. I'm the Executive Director for Habitat here in Pulaski County, and I just want to say how excited I am and how blessed we are to have you here. And after your last comment, I got to say on the job site every day, we start with a prayer.
Good.
And then we talk about safety, and then we begin to work.
That's great.
And it was a question about greenhouses. We built an eco-block house here, 3 months ago it was completed? Yeah, 3 months ago. Real excited about it. We want to see how much money this saves this family over the life of the house. I think it'll be terrific.
Yeah.
And the last thing is, I'm excited about the Fuller Center being in town, and we want to partner with you.
Good.
We have time for one more question. Heather, let's get the mic.
I'm going to be slightly a buzzkill. My name's Heather Hunt, the Arkansas Democratic Gazette, and I was going to ask, what is currently your relationship with Habitat? Obviously, the locals folks here, do you have any partnerships with Habitat across the country since you were dismissed in 2005?
Yeah, my problem with Habitat is basically with the executive committee of Habitat International. This brother here, I travel all over the country speaking and raising money for local Habitat affiliates everywhere. But it's the leadership right at the top that I have my problems with. It's like he said, you start your day with a prayer, and then I think that's pretty much the pattern all over the country. But it's the people right at the top of Habitat International that now have a different vision. So I do not have, I might tell you one interesting story. we start every day devotions at the Fuller Center, and Jimmy Carter came and led us in devotions at the Fuller Center a few months ago. And the president of the new chairman of the board of Habitat International is a man named Ron Terwilliger. And so he stopped by to see me. He was in town the same day that Jimmy Carter led us in devotions at the Fuller Center. And so he and I were talking, and I asked him, I just point blank asked him, I said, would you like to see the Fuller Center succeed or fail? And he said, oh, I want to see you succeed because I'm for low-income housing and you're helping out and we need more allies and so forth. And I told him, I said, well, if I went on your behavior, I would think you wanted us to fail because you haven't supported us at all. In fact, you just said negative things about us. And he says, that's a fair observation. I'm going to send you a donation. And he's a millionaire. He sent me $1,000. But he wants us to succeed a little bit.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's say thanks to Millard Fuller.